and we'll just be first talking about our own personal experiences about moving to Hiroshima from elsewhere. And then following on from that, there'll be time for just like Q&A, because I'm sure everyone's probably got questions that they want to direct to either of us or to all of us. So first of all, we've got quite a few people participating today. So there's a few kind of like Zoom rules. Yeah, so this is just the event schedule. And so there's a guest talk and then crosstalk after that. So just to help us kind of navigate, it'll be good if you could rename your screen name. And you can do that if you just click the kind of 3 little dots in the corner of your screen. And then if you can add your name, and then your current location, that might be quite a good way to kind of figure out where everyone's listening from. Yeah, so if you could do that now quickly, that would be great. Okay. Okay, that's great. Okay, and then there's just a few kind of, because there's so many people on here, we got like a few kind of requests. The first thing is to actually kind of mute yourself when you're not speaking, because otherwise it's going to cause a bit of confusion. And the other thing is when we have our question and answer session, if you can add the questions in the chat box, and you can choose to send that chat message to all panelists or to everyone. And then we can pick up the questions there and then and answer them. Another thing, if you don't want to type in to the chat box, but you have a question, you can maybe click there's a reactions little icon, and if you do the clap sign like that, we'll take that for meaning that you've got a question, okay? And then we'll try and get to you that way. But it's a bit tricky because there's about 30 people on this. Oh no, actually 23 at the moment, but there's going to be a few more joining. So, right. Okay, so to kick things off, we're just going to have a few short presentations from the three of us, just discussing how we arrived here. So to kick things off, if Mo-san if you'd like to go first. I think you've got a video.
Sure, please go ahead. So someone will play for us, right?
Yeah, I think it's probably going to start in a minute.
Hi, my name in Japanese is Kyomo. In English, my friends call me Mo. I came to study and live in Higashi-Hiroshima from 2013. Before I came to Japan from Beijing to Hiroshima, I worked 7 years in Shanghai doing museum design and digital media art related work. One day, I decided to make a lifestyle change, swapping my life in urban China for one in rural Japan. After researching online and talking with friends, I decided to join the Hiroshima University Taoyaka program, a global leading PhD program that engages with issues surrounding rural decline in regional Japan. I'm currently in my last stage of my PhD study as a candidate of cultural geography. I research rural island revitalization through art festival tourism, creative newcomers, and community revitalization. My supervisor is Professor Caroline Funk, who is a famous academic in this region. She has studied tourism in the Southern Inland Sea for more than 25 years. For the International Academic Society, I'm currently working as a co-convener of the Small Island Culture Research Initiative. I also work as a research director for the Art Island Center on Naoshima, the famous Japanese art island. In Higashi-Hiroshima, I live with my wife Simona, who is also an international PhD candidate from Italy, research sustainable agriculture in the same TAWECA program. We share a lot of interests and hobbies, one of which is weekly pottery making and learning about Japanese tea ceremony. I can't imagine we could have started this if we lived somewhere else. Since moving to Higashi-Hiroshima, I have also become really engaged in other aspects of Japanese culture, such as Aikido and aquascaping. Living in this region of Japan has changed our lives. We have created connections with the people and the places around us that make life so much more interesting. For example, we helped local farmers plant and harvest rice. We danced the bon otolin in local traditional festivals. We perform for island communities. We also organize international workshops with researchers. We lecture in local schools and communities to build a bridge between our cultures and regional Japan. I grew up in a hillside city, Suzhou, in China. This is a place without views of the sea and islands. I think this is one of the reasons why I really love the Southern Inland Sea. This love of the area is part of the reason why my PhD research focuses on the famous Setouchi Trinale. Those famous art islands attract millions of tourists from all over the world and bring people in contact with those small island communities. From 2018, I started an on-site team project focusing on the island in Hiroshima and in particular the historical harbor of Mitarai. The island in Hiroshima still have untapped potential. They are not as well known as those famous art islands in Kagawa, but they have so much charm. During my research period, I met so many entrepreneurs and newcomers enjoying their life and trying to make a difference. Like Tom in Mitarai, they are trying to breathe new life and become the change makers for those shrinking communities. By interacting with those people, I quickly became a friend, a volunteer, a supporter for promoting those islands. The Japanese government talk about relational population or kankei jinko. Those are non-permanent residents who try to make the rural community a better place through networking and cultural exchange. This is also an option for anyone who feels moving 100% to regional Japan might be difficult. After interviewing hundreds of local islanders, they always mention there is not enough people, not enough young people, and not enough effort being made to attract newcomers. So together with Tom, we created special expeditions and continue to think of other ways to promote those islands and their myriads. In May 2019, I presented my research at the opening ceremony of a local art festival in Mitarai called Shosai. The mayor of Kure-city, which has the third biggest population in Hiroshima Prefecture, came to my presentation. He told me the city would fully support my research and community revitalization efforts in Mitarai. I'm glad some efforts finally got external attention. One of my research assistants said he already started renting a mikan farm on the island and decided to become a mikan orange farmer. I'm happy to see these changes, and it shows how individuals can really make a change for a better future in and for those island communities.
Okay, that's great. Thank you for that, Mo. Thank you for that video. Okay, so let's just go straight on. So Jordan, do you want to introduce Kurahashi Island and your life
Yes,
there?
am I off on mute? Am I okay? All right, hello everybody. Welcome from around the world. It's pretty cool seeing people from Sweden, Chicago, Tokyo, all over the place. So welcome. Sorry about the crazy time change. I think Chicago might be 5 a.m., but thank you guys for taking the time. I think they're pulling up the slideshow right now. So yeah, I'm from the United States, from Minnesota, so not too far away from Chicago there. I first came to Hiroshima back in 2014 with a jet teaching program. And so I'm actually living in Hiroshima right now, but we could put on our application where we wanted to live, and I wanted to live in Hokkaido, which is actually on the far north side of Japan. So being from Minnesota, coming from a cold climate, I wanted to be in a similar climate. So I wanted to live in Hokkaido, and I got placed by the Board of Education in Hiroshima. And then you can see on the map right now, it says Hiroshima City. Right around that area is where the atomic bomb was dropped in the World War II. And I got placed in Kurahashi Island. So at first, being an American, I was pretty self-conscious, thinking about like, wow, people might hate me coming to this place. And yeah, so I was kind of hesitant at first coming to Hiroshima, being a foreigner, especially from the US, and decided to come out here for a year. And yeah, I'm in Kurahashi Island. You can see in the next slide right here, this is where I'm living right now. A little bit about my history in Japan. I was here for 1 year with the JET program. Then I switched with the Hiroshima Carp baseball team. Baseball is pretty big out here. I don't know if any of you guys seen a baseball game. I was with the Carp for 2 years, and then an international import company for 1 year in Tokyo. And then when I was in Tokyo around that time, I was kind of doing the busy sales businessman type, going on the busy trains. Yeah, and I was really missing the old rural island lifestyle that I got used to the first year I was in Japan. And I don't know if you guys from around the world know about the disasters that happened 2 years ago. There's heavy rain for about 2 or 3 days straight. And that kind of made a lot of like mountain landslides and stuff. So I ended up coming back to Kurahashi Island to help out as a volunteer. So I'm living right here. You can see it's really, really beautiful. There's the mountains and the sea. Right now, what I do for work, I'm working for a TV production company. And so I help out with like international stuff. We do commercials and advertising for different like targeted towards foreigners. Another thing that I've been helping out recently is helping out at local schools around the area in Kure-city, doing English teaching and doing stuff like that. This was a picture from the last Halloween. The kids, some kids are crying, some kids are laughing. Yeah, so just kind of doing a whole bunch of stuff right now. I'm renting a house right now in Kurahashi. And what I do for fun, living in the island on the rural side is really nice because you can get pretty big houses. I mean, when you guys hear about Japan, you might think kind of small houses and stuff like that. But the nice thing about living on the rural side is that you can get big houses. And being kind of lonely with Corona, I got myself 7 chickens. And yeah, that's been pretty fun. You get fresh eggs every morning. Yeah, also what I like to do for hobbies is there's a mountain that you guys might have saw on that first slide. I like to go up hiking with that with friends. This was a summer running camp that came to Kurahashi. A bunch of kids came and we did a running camp for a week. Yeah, some other stuff. It's really fun. What I really like about living on the rural side too, it's really fun interacting with like the local people. In the next slide, you can see right here, the old kind of grandmas and grandpas. It's fun getting involved and volunteering with them. Yeah, you guys can see the pictures. This was at one more slide back, please. Yeah, this was at one of the running events, and it's always fun helping out there. In the next slide, you can see was during the volunteer time when there was the kind of heavy rains. And in rural Japan, you guys might know the population is going down and down. And so we just saw in Mo's presentation, we need more young people and more kind of people with energy and excitement to kind of revitalize these towns. And so that's why I think the 3 of us and Hiroshima Prefecture went through the trouble to set up the thing tonight so that we can get some more young people out to the area. What I like to do on my off time too is set up events on the island. What's that? Yeah, another thing that I like to do on the island is this past we had a Halloween party. We set up for the kids, and kids come and do trick-or-treating, so I got to share some of my culture back home. That was pretty fun. And then tied some English into it too, because not a lot of kids get exposure to the island. So just kind of being able to share that with that. And yeah, so a lot of people might think that living in the rural area that there's not a lot to do, but kind of thinking the oppositely, because there's not a lot to do, a lot of stuff comes from like within what you want to do. So whether it's just going to the mountains or going out playing in the ocean with friends. One of my buddies from Osaka came, the picture became kind of blurry, sorry about that. One of my friends came with his group of 33 students as their university, and we did that running camp. And yeah, as you can see in the background here, we'll do one more picture later. Yeah, this is the view from, you can see my house right in the bottom side here. And you can see the islands in the back. This is actually the ocean. It's super, super flat though, because it's blocked by Shikoku Island, so it's nice and flat. And yeah, for you guys living abroad that are interested, I recommend once the Corona thing and stuff kind of ends, if you guys get a chance to come out and experience what it's like living in, or even just like traveling, getting a chance to see what it's like, getting to try all the delicious seasonal foods, getting to see like the warmth of the people. I think Japan will really catch your heart. So I don't know if you guys have never been here before, but I highly recommend you get a chance. And I think we're very lucky that we got a chance to meet all tonight, because now you guys got 3 connections and all over kind of, you got Tom, you got Mo, and you got me, of course. So please, if you ever want to get in touch, these are my social networks. I do a lot of posting about stuff going on the islands and kind of fun stuff that we're doing. And yeah, if you have any questions, get in touch with the Hiroshima Prefecture, and they'd be happy to introduce you to anybody. But yeah, we're looking forward to help, and hope you guys come out, help out the rural populations in Japan. Thank you guys for listening.
Right, thanks, Jordan.
Wonderful.
Great. I think someone's probably got their mic on, so maybe, yeah, let's have a quick check just to make sure that you've got your mute on. Otherwise, it's going to start getting difficult to listen to people. Right. Okay. I don't know if I can.
And maybe Mishi. Oh,
Okay. Let's just do them all. Okay. Sorry, I've just made an executive decision and just muted some people. Sorry. Okay. All right. So I'm going to just go on and do my part. So yeah, so I'm kind of currently living in Osakishimojima, which is part of the same. Actually, it's part of the same city as where Jordan's living. It's part of Kure-city, but it's right on the edge. So the next island across is actually Ehime Prefecture, and it's part of Shikoku. And so, yeah, this is just a quick slide, a few slides just to explain how I ended up living here. So just a quick kind of background about me. So I was born in Tokyo in, oh yeah, thanks. I was born in Tokyo in 1981. So my mum's Japanese, my dad's English, and we moved to the UK in 1987. So I've pretty much spent most of my life in the UK. After studying photography in England, I returned to Tokyo, and then I was living in Tokyo doing kind of English teaching, photography, writing, interpreting, like lots of random stuff, but trying to make it as a photographer mainly. And I did this project, this book called Organic Americans. And actually I went through Minnesota and places like that, just basically kind of crisscrossed the US, working on various organic farms and talking to the people I met. And that actually kind of sparked my interest in rural communities, because there were all these people doing basically just like living the way they wanted to live, you know, living by their own rules, but they had these kind of real kind of strong beliefs about how they wanted to live. So that was quite inspiring. Anyway, after I did that project, I met my wife Mai, and then we decided to make the move out of Tokyo. And after kind of going, actually we visited the Hiroshima Prefecture kind of advice center in Yurakucho and found our way to Osakishimojima, and just kind of fell in love with the place. And luckily there was a position going at the time for a rural revitalization officer, and luckily my managed to get that position. So what that meant was that we had 3 years where Maya would be working for the community to try and kind of encourage, well, yeah, rural revitalization. And then, so she's got her basic income. And the thing about this, it's called Chiki Okoshi Kyoryokutai, but they also provide you accommodation for a maximum of 3 years. So that was really helpful to make that first step. And then, so we moved here in 2015, and we've been here since. Oh, can you have the next slide, please? Sorry. So this is oh yeah, this one. So this is kind of where we're living now. So the town itself is called Mitarai on Osakishimojima, and it's part of an island chain called the Tobishima Kaido Islands, and it's connected by bridges to the mainland, as is Jordan's place in Kurahashi-jima as well. So although it's kind of island life, you're not completely cut off, which is actually really helpful when it comes to trying to work, because it means you can access anywhere just as long as you've got a car. Yeah, sorry, can I have the next slide, please? And this is a map I nabbed off Ciclo no Ie, which is like a cyclist place in Imabari, but it's pretty much the best map I've seen so far. But it kind of like shows you where we are. So this is the famous Shimanami Kaido route, which a lot of people might know, but this is a famous kind of popular cycling route that connects across bridges from Onomichi in Hiroshima in the north, and then Imabari in Shikoku in the south. And so we're just slightly off to the left, but we have ferry links linking the last island to Imabari and also to Omishima, which are both on the Shimanami Kaido. And then there's also kind of ferry links, high-speed ferry links to Takehara, which is actually to the north. Yeah, just around there. And then actually the airport is a really short journey from Takehara, so it's actually got quite good connections to the airport and then to the rest of the world, I guess. Sorry, can I have the next slide, please? Okay, so this is just kind of like what we expected before we moved compared to what we actually encountered after we moved. So the idea was, yeah, find ways to add to Maya's income during these 3 years, like thinking of it as a buffer period, so we can kind of continue living in the area. And we knew that the cost of living over here was going to be so much less than living in Tokyo. So you know, even if we don't have such a big income, if we kind of live these kind of frugal lives, grow our own vegetables, fish our own fish and things like that, we could probably kind of get by. We had a few like kind of ideas before we came. So thought, well, okay, I could do English teaching. Had a kind of funky idea of being a massive goat herder, but that didn't quite work out. And then doing kind of like tourism, bringing by fairs, music events. But honestly, I didn't really think that. I came from Tokyo where photographers were complaining all the time about the lack of jobs. And then you're thinking, all right, so there's no jobs. There's not a lot of photography jobs in Tokyo. Coming down here, like there's probably not going to be such a big demand for photography. But we did end up kind of, this is where I am now, but this is the old post office. And we rented the post office. It's for quite a cheap rent. And then I just started selling kind of postcards and photographs because there's quite a few tourists who come here. But that was kind of what it was initially. Yeah, and then after we lived here for, oh, can I have the next slide, please? Sorry. and so, yeah, what happened next was, well, we did kind of start off with this kind of slow life. Had a vegetable plot, borrowed a bit of a lemon grove. But then I started kind of like pushing the photography, knocking on doors, and then you can't, I don't know why I didn't realize this, but even though I'm living on the island in Osakishimojima, like the actual, the sphere that you can work in is basically the whole of the Chugoku area, which is like, yeah, basically the whole of Hiroshima and surrounding areas as well, especially if you've got a car. And actually being in this island, we're so close to Shikoku that you can kind of manage to do work in Shikoku as well. And after a while, it was just, I was busier than I was in Tokyo. I've eventually started a creating content creation company with a friend, and along with that side of the work, there's lots of kind of like odd jobs and volunteer work, festival things, lots of community work inside the community. So yeah, the slow life is, I think you can be as busy or as relaxed as you want to be, but if you want to get busy, I mean, there's so much to do in the countryside. I think Mo and Jordan would definitely agree with that. Okay, so just quickly going on to the next slide. Sorry. Yeah, but then the one thing is, like, even when you're busy, just stepping outside, you've got this amazing environment, and that's just, yeah, that's extremely lucky to have that there. Okay, sorry, going on to the next slide. Sorry. Thank you. And the other thing I just wanted to mention is that, so for example, like starting a shop or renting a property or buying a property, like property prices are so much more affordable here than they are in kind of the city, which means that you can actually do a lot to property that maybe would be pretty restrictive with places with like higher land prices. And so we actually bought this house after in Mitarai, and I'd just like to quickly show you how we did it up. Can I get the next slide? Yeah. So this is the original house, and so we managed to get it, yeah, for a pretty, well, an amazingly reasonable price. And it's just like an old kominka. And the thing is that there's so many empty houses in the Japanese countryside. It's sometimes tricky to actually get people to sell them or rent them to you. But once you live in the area for a certain amount of time, then that whole thing gets a little bit easier. Sorry, can I get the next slide? And so, yeah, we did quite a lot of the demolition work ourselves, and then there was a local carpenter who worked on it as well, and yeah, and then eventually we decided to sort of like turn the inside into something quite modern, and yeah. So the next slide, sorry. So this is what it kind of turned into, and I think quite a few people tend to do the traditional Japanese renovations, and those look fantastic as well. We just kind of like wanted to have something that's kind of a bit easier for us to live in. And yeah, that was when it was just finished, but it doesn't look like that now. It's full of junk. So that's that was it. Okay, thank you. Okay, so I think, so it's 8:30 now. So if we can just move into the question and answer session, and we can just have a kind of discussion. So if anyone has a question they'd like to pose for either one of us, you can write it in the chat or do that little hand signal. So we have our first question from Rob. So, what is the most difficult point in moving to an island? Okay, so Jordan, do you want to go for that?
Sure. The most difficult part for me, I don't know if Rob, I don't know if you're living. Oh, okay. So Rob asked that you're living in Higashi-Hiroshima. So you probably have convenience stores all over, and Japan is pretty well known for convenience stores. Like you go outside. The actually closest convenience store from my place is about by car 15-20 minutes. So most places close pretty early. I mean, there's not a lot of shops, there's not a lot of restaurants, but I mean, once you get used to that, it's not too tough. So I mean, being out in the sticks, you kind of have to deal with the inconvenience, but I guess that's something that you get used to and you kind of start to accept, and it just becomes natural. Yeah.
Oh, you with your travels and research, you've been to a lot of islands as well. You-
Are you asking me? It's a little noisy.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah. So, with your research and
Mm-hmm.
you've also have a lot of connections to lots of different islands. So
Mm.
you come across.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I can add something. So like Jordan says, is really has no convenience store, especially for example, from where I live, move to the island, there is only one convenience store. After that convenience store, I need to keep driving for 40 minutes without convenience store. So even several islands are connected with the bridges. So it's still not that convenient. I noticed like in Mitarai, in front of Tom's village, there is a mobile selling truck. So they bring kind of a convenience store every once a week or twice a week. So people have to go shopping during that period. So that's quite interesting. I think that's also quite environmentally friendly, honestly. So instead of having a convenience store 24/7, hopefully in the urban and no people go, but I think that's really shape a very special culture. Um, yeah, that's the reality. Not a lot of shops, not a lot of thing to do after 5 o'clock. So everybody basically say say good night at 5 o'clock. So as I remember, so people say oyasumi at 5 o'clock. So it's really shocking. After 9 o'clock, the traffic light is already stopped working. So it's hard to imagine for the people living in Tokyo or Osaka. Okay.
And I also like to add that I think when you move to an island, you quickly get to know everyone as well, and everyone quickly gets to know you. So that's kind of, I'm not sure if that's difficult, but it's quite different from living in somewhere that's urban. So we've got another question here. So as an American, would it be hard to spend a few months in Japan each year? So Jordan, do you want to go for that one?
Sure. And for visa requirements, no. So if you get a working job for whatever your job is, if you're an English teacher, or if you're whatever you end up doing, you are allowed a 1 year. Usually when you first start, you get a 1 year visa, and it is not a problem within your visa, but within the company that you work with, there'll be, I'm sure, restrictions with how much holiday time you can take. And I found there's a little bit of differences between American working culture and Japanese working culture. I don't think we have enough time to talk about that tonight. But yeah, if you can get that much time off for your work, for example, if you work for a university and that university allows you to take 2 months off, then yes, within your visa, that's no problem at all. It's just finding a job that you'll be able to get that much time off. And so I would recommend doing some research for what kind of schools you'll get the most time off, whether that's universities. Because if you end up getting a normal job with like an elementary school, junior high school, you'll be working quite a bit late into nights and probably not that much off time. So you might want to do a little bit of research checking about when you can get the most amount of time. Maybe Mo can talk about that too, about who gets the most amount of off time.
Well, I don't have too much comment about this. You can also try to come to Japan through the culture learning visa. I heard some people did that. So, but probably someone just remind me they don't have it anymore. So, but people in the past 20 years ago, some people try different type of visa, or you can try to do some art in residencies. I heard the Kure area has some art facility who has that. I know some people come through the art in residency in Norosan area. They have an art village there. That's the information I know. Thank you.
There's a follow-up question. As a 74-year-old Australian artist, how difficult is a permanent visa? So I guess, Jordan, would that go along with the same kind of line that you need a employer to back you? Or?
Yeah, for sure. If you can find a company that's willing to sponsor you, a lot of times it's difficult getting the job when you're living in your home country. So if you're living in Australia right now, I think it's difficult getting those contacts, like just applying. They don't know who you are. They don't know what kind of art you're able to do. So if you're able to come to Japan and show them that you're going to be an asset to their company, I think they'd be more willing to take the risk of paying all the money, doing all the stuff for the visa stuff, rather than you being abroad and not knowing anything about you. There's a pretty big barrier when you're living abroad. So if you can find a job, definitely. What about you, Tom? What do you think?
Yeah, I kind of cheated because I got a Japanese passport. But yeah, I think, but I think this is probably something that, I mean, if someone's really interested in moving, like probably the Hiroshima prefectural government who's hosting this event, they could probably think of a few ways as well to make that happen as well.
I don't know if he's married either. That's another another option.
I'll make things quick. There's, and also Rob has written that, yeah, for just travel, it's just 90 days is a limit if you just want to travel. So that's useful to know. So there's another question here. So, okay, so this one's to me. So when I talked about the ideas I had before moving to do his job, would you please tell me why it didn't work out like what you expected? So personally, yeah, I'd like to kind of share this out with Jordan and Mo as well. But my personal view is that you do have, you know, when you're thinking about moving to a place, well, anywhere really, but especially to somewhere like this, you're kind of in super brainstorming mode, thinking about every possibility and kind of thinking about how I'm going to make a living and all this stuff. And you've got all these ideas flying around in your head. But I think the thing is, like, once you get here, you actually see the situation, the reality of the place that you're living in. And then you kind of get to see things that would work, things that you wouldn't, that maybe you thought about doing that doesn't work. For example, like English teaching, I put flyers up around the island saying, would you like to learn English from a native British speaker, and like stuck loads of pictures of the Queen and stuff and Union Jacks all over it to try and like persuade people they want to learn the Queen's English or whatever. Anyway, I really did that. Literally, like, had 0 replies, so responses. So, you know, that idea kind of went out the window pretty quickly. So I think for me, like, once you're here, it's good to have like some kind of preconceived ideas about how you're going to make a living or what you want to do. But at the end of the day, it's about kind of balancing those ideas with what's actually happening here. And that's, you can only really do that after you've spent a long time in the location. Anyway, sorry. Jordan, do you want to
Yeah, so what, like, kind of difference of what I expected compared to how it turned out? I guess like what you said, you have ideas about what you come out when you, before you come here from your home country, and then when you come here, there's differences of what the gap is, of whether it's what the food is going to be like, or what people are going to be like, or what's your job going to be like. I found like the biggest, probably difficult for me, was getting used to the job culture here, knowing, being at different companies and seeing what it's like to work at different times. I think there's a different work culture compared to where I was from in the US, where I think the amount of time that they work, to put it kind of simply, is longer, quite a bit longer than what they do in the US. And it's, they're very serious about their work. So you might find yourself working late at nights, as Miss Might is working still at almost 9 o'clock at night, or on the weekends, Saturday and Sundays. So I think it's a different work culture that either you got to get used to, or I guess pack your bags. Yeah, so trying to get used to that was probably one of the most difficult things, I think, for me. And then kind of being flexible with that too.
That's great. Mo, anything different? But yeah.
From a research point of view, last year, Simona and I, we did an island research project. We interviewed basically 33 newcomers all over the Hiroshima island, a little bit Yamaguchi, Shikoku, and also Okayama. And based on the location, a lot of them really mentioned the place they choose is the best island in Japan. Okay, so it really doesn't matter the place. If you really like it, then that's it, that's your island. So, but from my point of view, after we kind of showed out the data, we really found out is another important factor is really important, depends on who you met on the island. Are there any young people? Are there any creative personnel? And also network is very important in this point. I see Tom keep making his own network, and also other few respondents, they also start making their network. This network is really matter. It's really kind of is your own social capital you bring from outside to this island, and you really want to establish something new. And at the same time, the community also change because of your actions. You bring something new and you bring some change. So I see if immigrants, if a newcomer can really facilitate this social exchange, that will be really helpful for both the lifestyle for those newcomers as well as a community building for long term. So I see Tom really as a very good example, because I every time I visit his island, there's always locals inside. So if a newcomer can create some business which local can also enjoy, that's something I would say is an ideal newcomer we want to promote. But I also see some business, they mainly aim at the tourists. So the local don't like them as well. So in this sense, I would say this is a bad case, and the community don't want this kind of newcomer as well. So I talked to some local elderly people. They also mentioned they don't want to rent the house to the people, just open the shop to the tourists. So yeah, I would say the location matters and the people also matters. The community also matters. 3 major factors. Okay, thank you.
Great. Okay. So there's going to be a few more questions here. So are there lots of expats in the rural parts of Japan where you are, in rural Japan in general? Jordan, how about in Kurahashi?
In Kurahashi, where I live right now, there is, for the oyster farms, oysters are very famous here. And as you can see in this ocean right behind you, I don't know if you guys can see the screen here, but oysters are very famous here in Kurahashi. And so a lot of people come to the Philippines to come work here. From the Philippines, and also in some factories around Kurahashi, there's people from Vietnam that come here. So there's different working programs that people will come. And then there's also one English teacher from Canada who is employed through the Kure Board of Education. So not too much. I think as a foreigner, if you go to an island that doesn't have a lot of foreigners, you might get some looks like when you go to the grocery store. I think people are just kind of curious, like who's there, and might ask you some questions. And yeah.
And Mo, I guess you have a lot of kind of other expats around where you are, with the university so close by.
You mean Hiroshima University? Or yeah, Higashi-Hiroshima, the city where I stay, we have at least 3 universities, and these are big universities. Hiroshima University, just international student, I think is more than 1,000, 2,000, something like that. Just Chinese students more than 600, as I know. And we have a Kinki University. Their engineering department is here, and also we have Hiroshima International University. As I know, we also have some other universities. So it's basically a university town. So I would say this totally changed the development pace for Higashi-Hiroshima, because a lot of industries, new houses coming out, the farmland become apartment, and it's a really quick process. So if I say in most of the area in rural Japan is shrinking, so Higashi-Hiroshima city is one of the really strange places, keep growing. So there's a new population and new thing, keep expanding area, the losing of agricultural land, something like that. Yeah, I think it's a quite opposite case compared with the island.
Yeah, I mean, on this island, there aren't many expats living here at the moment. I mean, we get so the town where I'm living is Mitarai, which is like this kind of historical preservation district, and so it's like this kind of Edo, Edo period harbour, and so we get quite a lot of kind of foreign tourists coming through, but not so many at the moment who are planning to live here or stay here for a long time. Yeah, I think there's quite a few on Osakishimojima though, just across the water. In fact, there's like Rob there works for this really kind of, advanced, cutting edge educational facility over there. So I think that there's a whole group of expats living together over there, aren't there? Yeah. Okay, so there's, if you think about it in terms of the islands close by, there's definitely quite a big network. Okay, so there's one more question here. So do you know anything about government programs that subsidize eikaiwa's farming or starting a local business? Okay, Jordan, do you have any?
I don't know too much about this. I know working through the city halls, you can write business proposals. One thing that I've heard in Kurahashi or within Kure-city is they have a business proposal plan where you, for example, say, I want to start, for example, like an okonomiyaki or a Japanese noodles restaurant. You can write a business plan proposal, and then a whole bunch of people write proposals, and then the winning idea gets a sponsorship of whatever. I think it's like maybe $10,000. So I've heard of that. I don't know. I think Maeda-san or Miss Maeda might know some more ideas about government subsidies, or I don't know. What about you, Tom or Mo?
I know some clusters. After I researched, I think one cluster is at the Soshima in Yamaguchi prefecture. They have a really good government support. So we met so many farmers and people create shops, restaurants, cafes. Another cluster, I would say Mukaishima in Onomichi, but it's not a shrinking island. Mukaishima is still not categorized as a Kasochiki, the depopulating area. So Hiroshima Island has support, but based on which region you are. I think Tobishima Kaido has good support. At the end of the Tobishima Kaido, right, they have a few islands from the Ehime prefecture. They have received, I think, less support. I think some people mentioned about it. So it's really based on the region. It's not like they have a policy equally support each island. So it's really depend on each prefecture government. Okay.
No, I think that's completely true. But yeah, I mean, there are some regions in Japan that really kind of go out of their way to subsidize and give grants to newcomers and people with families and things like that. But I think Hiroshima is definitely up there with them. So in terms of farming, so the island where I'm living on now, and I think Jordan is as well over there, it's big kind of like citrus farming areas. So lemon farming, orange farming is very big over here. And I know that they have, or the JA, which is like the Agricultural Association in Japan, they have this kind of mentorship program. I think it's similar to that revitalization officer role that my wife went into. So it's kind of like you're mentored and taught about farming for 3 years. And then you're kind of given an income for those 3 years as well. I'm not too sure about the details, but I know that there's quite a few kind of government subsidies for farming and people trying to get into farming. Okay, we're kind of slowly running out of time. Okay, so can we do this last question? Maeda-san, okay, is that okay? All right. So how do local people look and think about foreigners in general in rural parts of Japan? Do they accept them as a new member of the community, or are they against them, considering that most of the local are elderly people? So Jordan, you mentioned that some of those school kids were crying and some of them were laughing. How do people take to you in general?
I think that was not just being the foreigner, but that was more of the Halloween costume that I was wearing. But yeah, when I first moved to the island, a lot of people would come up and try talking to you, of course. I mean, being a novelty on the island, with the island that I live on, there's only a few thousand people. So, I mean, that's almost the same population as the high school that I went to. So when there's a new person in, especially when you look different than most of the Japanese people, people will be interested and want to learn more about you. And I don't know if Kaori's asking that in Tokyo, but I don't know if people have not been to Japan. I don't know, Celine or Elmira. I don't know if you guys have been to Japan before, but people ask you all like the typical questions, like, can you use chopsticks and can you eat fish? And they'll be interested in stuff like that. Yeah, but even being an American moving to Hiroshima, I was very surprised that people were more progressive than I thought. And I didn't have any bad experiences, which I'm very happy about.
Mo? And I think Kaori asked the question, said, my husband, that's why.
That's a good question. I think a lot of people mention about this. I think it's a typical question. Even living in the urban Japan, you will face the same issue. So according to my experience, the people in the rural area are super warm compared with the people in the city. That's in general impression. I think every time I go to the island, the elderly people would talk like 1 hour at least. So you spend a lot of time just communicate with them. Sometimes they give you mikan, they give you orange for free. I feel that kind of atmosphere is really attract me. I think if you act okay in the community and doing your stuff, and I think it's not cause any problem in the rural Japan, I think, in general.
Yeah, I think on this island as well, like I think people, like Jordan said as well, that they're very curious. and they're probably more interested in finding out about you rather than, I don't think that anyone would be, I've never heard of anyone being like, I don't know, experiencing any kind of aggression or racism, on these islands. I mean, mostly it's all kind of very, it's curiosity, but very kind of positive in all aspects. Okay, so I think the time is kind of getting on now, so we'll probably have to close up this talk here. So if you have other questions, I think you'll be able to ask them to Hiroshima Prefecture in this questionnaire that they're going to give you in a bit. So yeah, first of all, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And I think we got through quite a lot of interesting questions.